Today I'm focusing on gesture drawing. I'm hoping to break this down into manageable chunks and give you a little bit of insight into what's going on in my head while I draw. First, I want to show you how I break the body into shapes. I do a kind of a coat hanger shape coming across the shoulders. I continue the shape into an upside down cone shape coming down towards the waist. For the head in this drawing, the figure looks up, so the main important shape to focus on here is to put a little triangle at the base of where the jawline meets the neck. I then add a couple of strokes to loosely mark out where the rest of the head could possibly be at this stage. It's all a little undecided at this point. The next thing I do is thinking about how long the arms and legs are. So I try to put in a little mark where I want each of these extremities to end, and especially where I want there to be contact with the floor. In this reference, we've got one foot bearing all of the weight, and I want to capture that sense of contact, as I think that's important for the overall gesture here. I will describe the foot using a simple triangle/cone shape here. Next, I see and mentally draw a line where the waist is concerned. I picture where the 2 points of the hips are. I pay attention to the direction of these. I mentally draw a straight line through these 2 points, and this angle describes a change in the direction of this body. If you also create 2 points of where the base of each side of the rib cage meets the waist and draw a line through those 2 points, you can see the angle happening here. You have tension on the side over here, and we've got a sense of stretching happening over here. There's a twist, which is important. The hips are lining up angled a little, but flatly facing towards the viewer. The rib cage, however, is twisting forward, angling slightly away from the viewer like this. Something I pay a lot of attention to as I'm doing this is really looking at the line going through the figure from the top of the shoulder all the way down to the foot that bears weight. I want there to be some tension captured in this. I want there to be movement, and I want to create an illusion of the figure being held up. So I pay a lot of attention to where below the foot meets the floor. And in this case, I feel the foot is coming around underneath, and the figure is held up in a balance with the shoulder on one side and the leg lifted up on the other side. In this pose, I don't put a lot of emphasis on the hands, as I feel the significant movement is all coming from the foot up into the waist, and then the hands are actually somewhat soft. So I will kind of softly mark up where the hands are without paying too much attention to detail. Now that I've done this little explanation of what's going on in my head, I would love to bring you into the process of how this drawing was created. In this drawing, I want the chest to be the focal point. So that's where I plan to put the darkest parts up against the highlight, and where I want to put in most of the details. I also want to talk a little bit about composition. Here's a trick that I'm using all the time. I pay a lot of attention to where the darkest darks go. I love the sense of abstraction mixed with realism, and one of the ways I aim to do this is I let the drawing fade out when I get closer to the edges of the paper. This creates a sense of intensity around the center of the drawing, and that really draws the eye into where I want the eye to go. It imitates the depth of field that we are used to seeing as we focus on something in the foreground, and everything else becomes a bit faded and blurry. This style of drawing imitates that sense of depth of field and creates a sense of calm, because we're telling the eye where to rest and absorb the movement, but also making it clear to the viewer what bits of the drawing are less important. And that creates a sense of calm in the drawing, even though there's a lot of movement going on, and there are elements of the drawing that are wild and reckless. This takes me back to drawing lessons at uni, where my drawing teacher would say that when you're working on a piece of art, you always need to find a place in the picture where you can balance a cup of tea. Composition explained in English terms. I'm Danish, by the way, so I love this little rather English analogy and found it quite charming and memorable. I felt it was really useful when it comes to composition. Working with composition is like working with this balance. You need to balance activity and calm for the drawing to work. I've always loved gesture drawing. Ever since I was introduced to this, I loved it. I remember sitting in life drawing class, slightly uncomfortable with the whole no clothes thing, but soon completely absorbed in the privilege of studying somebody's anatomy. I remember my first experiences with this doing life drawing classes at a college in Copenhagen in Denmark. We were asked to draw different poses. We'd start with 20-minute sessions, and the poses would gradually become shorter and shorter, and we'd work our way down to as short as 10-second poses. I remember thinking, how is this even possible? But after some time practicing, I started finding the 10-second pose particularly fascinating. You started to see the body break into abstracted shapes of movement, and you could really feel the human present in there despite there being so little information in the picture. On a side note, and rather interestingly, I've also tested out selling this type of drawing, and I find it sells much better than more detailed drawings. I believe it's the element of abstraction which brings a sense of anonymity into the picture. The abstraction takes a picture away from being someone and brings it into a more existential, ethereal realm. The gesture itself adds an element of meaning, and whatever this figure is involved in can create a connection to its viewer. They can insert themselves into that feeling. With this video, I am aiming to demystify how these drawings are created. I hope breaking it down into smaller chunks was helpful and you got something good out of today's drawing session. I also really hope you'll come back to this channel and do more drawing together. I'd like to know if you would be interested in seeing this video without the time lapse. If yes, please comment slow. Before you go, I want to encourage you to sign up below. I'm creating an email list and I want to give away an original drawing in a prize draw that will take place in January. So far, it's a small group of people on my list, so you have a pretty high chance of receiving one of my original artworks. Be aware, however, I am pretty new to email lists, so when I tested this out with myself, I noticed that my email went to my junk, so please double check your junk folder. Thank you so much for watching this video. You've made my day. Take care. All the best.